What if I told you there's a hidden guide, an ancient source of wisdom, sitting right in front of us? A treasure so profound, yet so often overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. Imagine a book that holds the keys to life's biggest questions. How should I live? Who can I truly trust? How do I find peace, purpose, and fulfillment? This isn't just another self-help book or a fleeting dose of motivation. This is the Book of Proverbs, an ancient collection of timeless truths, written under divine inspiration, offering the blueprint for a life rich with meaning and purpose. But here's the thing. Proverbs doesn't simply tell you what to do. It invites you to go deeper. It pulls back the curtain on your daily life, uncovering the decisions you face and illuminating the paths that lead either to fulfillment or destruction. If you're like most people, you might be tempted to see Proverbs as merely nice advice, a collection of wise sayings that feel good but seem far removed from today's world. What if I told you it's so much more? These teachings aren't just practical tips. They are spiritual insights capable of transforming the very foundation of your life. Proverbs isn't here to inspire you for just a moment. Its wisdom is here to reshape your heart, align your life with God's eternal truths, and equip you to face life's toughest challenges with strength and grace. Imagine starting each day, not with another motivational video or self-help podcast, but with the timeless wisdom of Proverbs, words that don't just lift your spirits but draw you closer to the true source of all understanding, God Himself. Over the coming journey, we'll dive into these ancient truths together. Each verse is an invitation to see life differently, to align your perspective with divine wisdom, and to embrace the rich, purposeful life you were created for. By the end, you won't just have answers to life's questions. You'll have a new lens, a lens of godly wisdom to navigate this complex world. So grab a pen, settle in, and prepare to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. Let these teachings sink into your soul, revealing the full potential of your faith. And if this message brings value to your life, share it with others, because the wisdom in Proverbs isn't meant to stop with you. It's a gift to be passed on, a light for a dark world, calling us all back to the truth, strength, and purpose found in God. Let's uncover the Book of Proverbs together here on Daily Bible Stories, where ancient wisdom isn't just old. It's alive and waiting for us. Are you ready? What exactly is the Book of Proverbs? Many think of it as a collection of wise sayings, practical tips, or a list of good ideas for life. But Proverbs is so much more than that. This isn't just an ancient text filled with life hacks or moral guidelines. The Book of Proverbs is a divinely inspired manual for living, a life rooted in truth, honor, humility, and alignment with God's heart. This book wasn't meant to sit on a shelf, collecting dust. Proverbs is alive, calling out to us, challenging us to see life from a deeper, truer perspective, a perspective that's intimately connected to God's wisdom. Let's rewind to its origins. Tradition tells us much of Proverbs was penned by King Solomon, a man renowned for his God-given wisdom. When Solomon had the chance to ask God for anything, wealth, fame, or power, he chose wisdom. His selfless request pleased God, and in return, Solomon was blessed with an unmatched understanding of life and leadership. Proverbs, then, is a window into that extraordinary wisdom, a treasure trove of divine insights gifted to humanity through the Spirit of God. But Proverbs isn't just about Solomon. These words are alive because God's Spirit moves through them, offering timeless guidance that resonates deeply with our souls. Each proverb is like a seed, small but brimming with potential to grow, transform, and renew us from the inside out, if only we let them take root. Think about it. This isn't a book confined by time or culture. It spoke to hearts thousands of years ago, and it remains uncannily relevant today. Why? Because it addresses the universal struggles of being human. How do we live with integrity? How do we choose friends wisely? How do we guard our hearts, handle relationships, manage anger, pride, money, and so much more? Proverbs doesn't just offer quick fixes or simple solutions. It provides a roadmap for walking in God's ways. It helps us navigate life with a divine perspective, equipping us to face challenges with His wisdom as our compass. At its core, Proverbs is an invitation. But it's not an invitation to any ordinary wisdom. It's a call to the wisdom that begins with the fear of the Lord. This isn't fear in the sense of terror, but a profound reverence and awe of God, a posture of the heart that places Him at the center of all we do. More than advice, this book is a mirror. It reflects our actions, our motives, and our desires, challenging us to grow into the people we were created to be, people who embody God's goodness, strength, and love. It pushes us to not only ask, "What should I do?" but "Who am I becoming?" So as we journey through the teachings of Proverbs, remember, this isn't just a collection of sayings. It's a divine blueprint for a life rooted in eternal truth, truths that can shape us into reflections of our Creator. Are you ready to let these timeless words sink in and take root? Because Proverbs isn't just a book to be read. It's a book to be lived. Let's explore it together and uncover the life God has called us to live. What does it mean to be wise? To walk through life with understanding, purpose, and clarity? The book of Proverbs tells us that all true wisdom begins with something profound, something that might seem unusual at first: the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 1 verse 7 declares, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." But what does this fear really mean? And why is it so essential? To grasp the weight of this phrase, let's look at the life of the man who wrote it, King Solomon. Solomon wasn't just any ruler. He was the son of David, chosen by God to lead Israel. Yet Solomon didn't begin his reign by seeking power, wealth, or influence. Instead, he asked for something that delighted God: wisdom. In 1 Kings 3 verse 9, Solomon prays, "Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." God was so pleased with this request that He granted Solomon wisdom beyond human comprehension. Wisdom so extraordinary that leaders from nations far and wide came to seek his counsel. And yet, with all his unparalleled understanding, Solomon consistently pointed to a singular truth. True wisdom begins not with intelligence or experience, but with the fear of the Lord. This fear isn't about terror or dread. It's a profound reverence that overwhelms the soul, a deep awareness that we stand before a holy, all-powerful Creator. It's the recognition that God knows the mysteries of the universe, sees the hidden depths of every heart, and governs with perfect justice. To fear the Lord is to understand that He is infinitely greater than we can imagine, yet, incredibly, He invites us to draw near to Him. We see this theme echoed in Ecclesiastes, another of Solomon's writings. Here, we encounter a man who pursued pleasure, success, and knowledge, only to conclude that without God, it was all meaningless. In Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13, Solomon declares, "Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." He learned firsthand that wisdom divorced from God's truth leads to emptiness. But why is the fear of the Lord the foundation of wisdom? Because it puts everything in its rightful place. The fear of the Lord reminds us that we are not the center of the universe. God is. It humbles us, revealing the limits of human understanding and opening us to receive a wisdom that transcends anything we could achieve on our own. This fear makes us teachable. It's the beginning of humility, the recognition that true wisdom is a gift from God, not something we create or discover within ourselves. It's a posture of awe and surrender that prepares our hearts to hear and obey God's voice. Even ancient texts outside the traditional canon capture this truth. In Sirach, a book treasured in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, we read, "The beginning of wisdom is to fear the Lord. She is created with the faithful in the womb." Sirach 1:14. This wisdom, born from the fear of the Lord, isn't something we earn through effort. It's woven into the hearts of those who seek God with reverence. Imagine standing before the throne of God, sensing His glory, His holiness, His unmatched power. This is the kind of awe Proverbs calls us to. It's a fear that humbles us, exposes our need for His guidance, and draws us closer to His heart. Solomon's own life illustrates the rise and fall of wisdom. In his early years, he sought God's wisdom above all else, but as his heart grew divided by wealth, foreign alliances, and idolatry, he strayed from the very foundation he had proclaimed. The man who wrote, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," allowed pride and distraction to lead him astray. His later reflections in Ecclesiastes reveal the sorrow of a man who had everything yet realized he had lost his way without God. This is why Proverbs begins with the fear of the Lord. It's a warning, a call to stay grounded, to remember that all wisdom, all knowledge, all understanding begins and ends with God. Without the fear of the Lord, even the wisest can lose their way. Today, we live in a culture that teaches us to seek wisdom within ourselves, to chase answers in self-discovery, trends, or success. But Proverbs challenges us to take a different path. It calls us to humility, to acknowledge that we are not the source of wisdom, God is. Only when we revere His authority, His holiness, and His sovereignty can we begin to walk in true wisdom. So let's start there with the fear of the Lord, because it's not just the foundation of wisdom. It's the key to living a life that honors the Creator and fulfills the purpose for which we were made. In Proverbs, relationships are never treated as casual or unimportant. Every person we allow into our lives, every influence we welcome, is like a thread in the fabric of our spiritual journey. These people shape our character, influence our values, and even impact our faith. Proverbs speaks to this with urgency, making it clear: the people we choose to walk with can lead us toward life or destruction. Consider Proverbs 13 verse 20, which states, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Picture Solomon, surrounded by advisors, military leaders, servants, and foreign envoys. As king, he understood the power of influence better than most. He had to discern which people would strengthen his reign and which could bring harm. Early in his life, Solomon surrounded himself with wise counsel, advisors who reinforced his desire to honor God. But as the years passed, Solomon's relationships changed. He gradually surrounded himself with individuals who led him to compromise his faith. His numerous political alliances, marriages, and advisors from foreign lands introduced influences that lured his heart away from God. The man who once valued wisdom above all else, who asked God for a discerning heart, drifted into spiritual decay, seduced by relationships that prioritized power and pleasure over truth. Solomon's life is a sobering reminder. Wisdom in relationships isn't a one-time choice. It's an ongoing commitment. Proverbs, written from Solomon's experiences, warns us of this truth. Imagine yourself in Solomon's shoes, facing the allure of relationships that promise status, power, or satisfaction. Proverbs doesn't simply caution us to avoid the company of fools. It challenges us to see relationships as sacred. The people we choose to walk with aren't just acquaintances. They're spiritual partners who influence our direction and growth. Proverbs 22 verses 24 to 25 offers further guidance. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. This isn't just practical advice. It's a warning about the contagious nature of character. The anger, pride, or recklessness of those we let close can seep into our own hearts, subtly shaping us in ways we may not even realize. This wisdom isn't unique to Proverbs. The Book of Sirach, an ancient text treasured in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, echoes this truth. Faithful friends are a sturdy shelter. Whoever finds one has found a treasure. Sirach 6:14. Both Proverbs and Sirach emphasize that the right friends are more than companions. They are a source of refuge, strength, and wisdom. A godly friend is a shelter in the storms of life, someone who supports you and points you back to God when the world threatens to pull you away. In today's world, relationships are often treated as disposable. People come and go, and the meaning of friendship is often reduced to social media connections or casual acquaintances. But Proverbs calls us to something deeper. It urges us to seek relationships with intention, friendships that lift us up, challenge us, and push us closer to God. Have you ever noticed how certain people leave you feeling more critical, anxious, or restless? Proverbs warns us to guard against this, to be vigilant about who we let into our inner circle. The influence of others has a profound impact on the direction of our lives. Proverbs 27 verse 17 famously says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Think about that imagery. To sharpen iron, friction is required. Sparks fly as two blades grind against one another. A true friend, one worth keeping close, isn't necessarily someone who always agrees with us. A godly friend is someone willing to challenge us, to point out our blind spots, and to speak truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Real friendships, the kind Proverbs describes, aren't built on flattery or convenience. They're about refining each other for God's purposes. Imagine young Solomon, receiving advice from trusted friends who encouraged him to seek wisdom, honor God, and lead with humility. Those relationships likely shaped his early reign, grounding him in truth. Now imagine later in his life, as Solomon grew isolated, surrounded by individuals who prioritized political gain over spiritual integrity. He drifted, and his legacy became a warning. Walking with the wrong people can lead even the wisest astray. So, who are you walking with? Who is sharpening you, challenging you, and encouraging you to become the person God has called you to be? Are there people in your life who are pulling you away from God's truth, distracting you from your purpose, or nurturing qualities that don't honor Him? Proverbs urges us to take these questions seriously, to evaluate our relationships with spiritual clarity, and to make decisions rooted in God's wisdom rather than convenience or comfort. Building relationships with the wise doesn't happen by accident. It takes effort, discernment, and, at times, the courage to let go of people who don't have our best interests at heart. But Proverbs reminds us that true friendship is a sacred partnership. When we surround ourselves with people committed to God's truth, we're better equipped to withstand life's storms, grow in wisdom, and fulfill the purpose God has placed on our lives. Friendship isn't just about connection, it's about calling. Choose wisely, and let God guide your relationships. In Proverbs, the power of words is presented with a gravity that might surprise us. In God's eyes, words are far from trivial. They are powerful, like seeds that can grow into life or spread destruction. Proverbs 18 verse 21 puts it plainly. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. King Solomon, known for his extraordinary wisdom, understood this truth better than most. As a leader, he saw firsthand how words could either build up a kingdom or tear it apart. A single decree could bring peace, while a careless statement could spark war. His own life bore witness to the power of words. In his early years, his speech was marked by justice and wisdom. Yet later, compromise and carelessness crept in, leaving ripples of harm. But this truth in Proverbs isn't just for leaders. It's for all of us. Every word we speak carries weight. Words have the power to heal, encourage, and bring joy, or to wound, deceive, and destroy. Think of a time in your own life when words had a profound impact. Maybe it was an encouraging remark that lifted your spirit or a harsh statement that left a lasting scar. Proverbs doesn't shy away from reminding us that words are never just words. They create ripples that extend far beyond the moment they are spoken, shaping both our lives and the lives of those around us. Proverbs 12 verse 18 paints this vividly. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Imagine a sword, a weapon designed to harm. Reckless words are like that weapon, cutting deeply and often unintentionally wounding others. Solomon, through his own experiences, likely witnessed how his words impacted his people, his family, and his kingdom. But here's the contrast. While reckless words pierce, wise words bring healing. Think about that for a moment. Words, when spoken with wisdom, have the power to mend what is broken and soothe the wounds of life. We've all felt the uplifting effect of a kind comment or a thoughtful word, the way it can turn a bad day around or offer hope when we're struggling. Proverbs reminds us that each of us holds this power within us. The power to heal or hurt, to build up or tear down. Proverbs 15 verse 1 adds another layer of insight. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Solomon understood that our responses can shape the outcome of situations. How many conflicts or misunderstandings could be diffused with a simple, gentle word? The Proverbs invite us to approach conversations with humility, to seek understanding before seeking to be understood. But words don't only impact those around us, they shape our own hearts. The book of James in the New Testament echoes Proverbs in this regard, comparing the tongue to the rudder of a ship. James 3 verses 4 to 5 says, "Take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Like a rudder, our words steer the direction of our hearts, guiding us either closer to God's truth or away from it." Imagine standing before Solomon and asking, "What is the secret to living in peace?" His answer likely wouldn't be about power or wealth. He would say, "Guard your tongue." For Solomon, the true test of wisdom was often revealed in the way a person spoke, in their gentleness, honesty, and restraint. Wisdom wasn't just about knowledge. It was about how one chose to speak. Proverbs 16 verse 24 offers yet another perspective. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. In ancient Israel, honey wasn't just a sweet treat. It was precious, a rare gift with both nourishing and healing properties. Proverbs compares wise words to a honeycomb, reminding us that our speech can be both sweet and restorative, bringing healing to even the deepest wounds. How often do we consider our words as something that could heal? Our world often encourages us to speak without restraint, to say whatever is on our minds without considering the consequences. But Proverbs calls us to something higher. It challenges us to treat our words with intention, to see them as tools for God's purposes. Are you speaking words that bring life? Or do your words often drift toward criticism, impatience, or anger? Proverbs doesn't demand perfection, but it does call us to a higher standard. It urges us to make our words a reflection of God's wisdom, love, and patience. Imagine if we approached every conversation with the awareness that our words hold the power to build up or break down. How different would our relationships be? Our communities? Even our own hearts? Proverbs invites us to recognize the gift God has given us in the ability to speak and to use it for good. Let your words become channels of His love, tools for healing, and reflections of His wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, work and wealth aren't treated as mere means to an end. Instead, they're presented as opportunities to reflect God's character, moments to demonstrate faithfulness in the smallest details and honor Him through how we approach both our efforts and our resources. Proverbs 10 verse 4 declares, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth." This isn't just advice about making a living. It's a profound call to see our work as part of a bigger picture, one that intertwines our relationship with God and our witness to the world. King Solomon, a man blessed with unimaginable wealth, understood the delicate balance between prosperity and responsibility. He recognized that riches, when used wisely, could bless a kingdom, but when sought selfishly, could lead to ruin. His teachings in Proverbs reflect this tension, warning against both laziness and greed, while promoting diligence, discipline, and contentment. One of Solomon's most vivid illustrations of diligence comes in Proverbs 6 verses 6 to 8. "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." Imagine this Solomon, one of the wealthiest men in history, pointing to a tiny ant to teach us a powerful principle about wisdom. The ant, though small, embodies virtues that are essential for godly living: self-discipline, preparation, and foresight. It doesn't work only when someone is watching, nor does it labor for immediate gratification. Instead, it diligently stores and gathers, preparing for future needs with steady, quiet effort. Solomon challenges us to mirror the ant's approach, asking, are we working with long-term purpose, or simply chasing short-term satisfaction? Are we faithful in our efforts, even when no one is watching? For Solomon, faithful work, even in mundane tasks, was a reflection of a heart that honors God. Proverbs 22 verse 7 offers a sober warning. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. This isn't just a caution against debt. It's a reminder that money, if mishandled, can enslave us. A life built on borrowing and spending beyond our means leads to bondage, a dependency on the lender rather than on God. In today's culture, debt is often marketed as a way to achieve instant gratification. A new car, a bigger home, a luxurious vacation, all just a loan away. But Proverbs invites us to see wealth differently. Financial freedom isn't about acquiring everything we desire. It's about living within our means, letting our needs, not our wants, drive our decisions. It's about experiencing the peace that comes from being free of debt and being able to give generously without worry. The Book of Sirach, another ancient wisdom text respected in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, echoes this sentiment. Sirach 31:1 says, "Wakefulness over wealth wastes away one's flesh, and anxiety about it drives away sleep." Both Sirach and Proverbs remind us that endlessly chasing wealth, without wisdom, drains us, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. True prosperity, they teach, isn't found in accumulation but in contentment, generosity, and freedom from materialism. Proverbs 11 verses 24 to 25 unveils a paradox of generosity. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. In a world that often encourages us to hoard and hold tightly, Proverbs reveals the divine principle of giving. Those who give generously find themselves enriched, not necessarily in material wealth, but in joy, peace, and spiritual blessings that far surpass monetary value. Imagine living this way, not clinging to every dollar, but trusting God's provision. Imagine being free to give without hesitation, knowing that God's abundance flows through those who are willing to share. This is the freedom Proverbs invites us into, a life marked by contentment, generosity, and unwavering faith. When it comes to hard work, Proverbs 12 verse 11 reinforces the value of honest labor. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Solomon knew the allure of shortcuts, the temptation of get-rich-quick schemes. But he warns us that integrity and consistency in our work yield true, lasting rewards. Shortcuts, on the other hand, often lead to disappointment or worse, ruin. Honest labor, whether in our careers, homes, or ministries, bears fruit over time. So, are you managing your work and finances in a way that honors God's wisdom? Are you diligent in your efforts, cautious with debt, and generous with your resources? Proverbs challenges us to see work and wealth not as possessions to hoard but as gifts entrusted to us by God. How we handle these gifts reveals the condition of our hearts. Imagine starting each day with this mindset, working for God, managing your resources with His wisdom, and viewing every task and paycheck as part of a larger, divine purpose. Proverbs isn't just about working and earning. It's about living with intention, diligence, and peace in every area of life. If these teachings resonate with you, take a moment to reflect. How can you align your work and finances with God's principles? And if you know someone who might benefit from this wisdom, share it with them. Here on Daily Bible Stories, we're on a journey to uncover truths that not only shape our spiritual lives but transform how we live, work, and give. In Proverbs, integrity isn't just a virtue. It's the foundation of a life that truly honors God. Proverbs teaches that integrity isn't about perfection but about consistency, honesty, and alignment with God's ways. It's the quiet, resolute commitment to do what is right, not just when it's easy or when others are watching, but in every moment, no matter the circumstance. Proverbs 10 verse 9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." These words paint a vivid picture. A life grounded in integrity is one of security and peace, while a life of deceit is fraught with instability and inevitable exposure. Imagine King Solomon, a ruler entrusted with unparalleled wisdom and power. He knew the temptations that came with wealth and influence, the allure of shortcuts, the appeal of bending truth to gain favor or avoid conflict. Early in his reign, Solomon was celebrated for his discernment and unwavering commitment to God's ways. He famously asked for wisdom, not riches or power, and God honored his request. Yet as time went on, Solomon's integrity was tested, as ours so often is. He learned, as we all must, that integrity isn't a one-time choice but a daily commitment to live by God's truth. In Proverbs, integrity is more than just honesty, it's wholeness. It's living a life that is undivided, free of hidden agendas or double-mindedness. Integrity is the strength of knowing that our actions, words, and thoughts align with God's character. Proverbs 11 verse 3 captures this beautifully. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. In a world where deception, manipulation, and moral compromises often lead to quick rewards, Proverbs calls us to a higher standard. It reminds us that integrity acts as a compass, guiding us through life's challenges and temptations. When we walk in integrity, we are not easily swayed by trends or pressures. Instead, we are grounded, secure in the knowledge that our path aligns with God's truth. Proverbs doesn't promise that walking in integrity will always be easy. In fact, it often acknowledges the cost. The Book of Sirach, another ancient wisdom text, echoes this idea. Sirach 4:10 warns, "Do not let your integrity or loyalty be compromised, even if it brings suffering." Integrity may cost us in the short term, whether it's a relationship, a job opportunity, or the approval of others, but Proverbs assures us that this cost is worth it. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, it says, promising a deep peace that comes from living in alignment with God. This peace isn't dependent on external success. It's rooted in the assurance that we are honoring God with our lives, even when the world doesn't understand. Consider Proverbs 20 verse 7. The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. Integrity leaves a legacy. It doesn't just impact us. It shapes the lives of those around us, our children, our friends, our communities. A life of integrity creates a ripple effect, blessing others with the example of steadfast character and faithfulness. Imagine passing down not just material wealth, but a name associated with honesty, kindness, and unwavering commitment to God. Proverbs also reveals that integrity is more than a safeguard for ourselves. It's a light to the world. Proverbs 4 verse 18 declares, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day." A life of integrity stands out in a broken, cynical world. It's a beacon of hope, a testimony that it's possible to live uprightly in the face of corruption and deceit. When we live with integrity, others notice. They are drawn to the light of our character, inspired by our consistency, and, sometimes even transformed by our example. In a culture that often rewards compromise, living with integrity can feel lonely. But Proverbs promises that those who walk this path walk with a confidence that no worldly approval can match. Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways, says Proverbs 28 verse 6. True wealth isn't measured by our possessions or status, but by the depth of our character. Imagine the impact of integrity in every area of our lives. In relationships, built on trust and honesty. In workplaces, where people honor commitments and value truth. In communities, where truth is upheld over convenience or compromise. Integrity is more than a personal virtue. It's a transformative force. It reshapes families, strengthens communities, and stands as a witness to God's truth. Are you walking in integrity? Are there areas in your life where compromise has crept in, where convenience has replaced conviction? Proverbs challenges us to examine our hearts and align every part of our lives with God's truth. It's not just about doing the right thing occasionally. It's about living consistently in a way that reflects God's wisdom and love. Imagine starting each day with the intention to live with integrity in all things, to let God's truth guide your decisions, to see every choice as an opportunity to honor Him. Proverbs reminds us that integrity isn't just about avoiding wrongdoing. It's about building a life of peace, purpose, and unwavering faith. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on how you might align your life more closely with God's principles. And if you know someone who needs encouragement in this area, share this message with them. Here on Daily Bible Stories, we're on a journey to uncover truths that shape not just our faith, but how we live and love in the world. The book of Proverbs reveals a profound truth that feels almost countercultural. True greatness is found in humility. Again and again, Proverbs warns that while the world exalts pride, self-reliance, and confidence, it is humility that brings us closer to God. Proverbs 16 verse 18 famously declares, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." This isn't just a moral lesson. It's a spiritual law woven into the fabric of life. Pride isn't merely a character flaw. It's a destructive force that blinds and ultimately leads to downfall. King Solomon, the wisest man of his time, was not immune to pride's subtle dangers. At the start of his reign, Solomon displayed remarkable humility, asking God for wisdom to govern his people. God was so pleased with this request that he granted Solomon unparalleled wisdom, along with wealth and power. Yet as Solomon's fame and fortune grew, so did the seeds of pride. His heart, once wholly devoted to God, became divided. The very king who declared, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," would later make decisions that led to the fragmentation of his kingdom. Solomon's life serves as a powerful reminder that pride often begins subtly, creeping into our hearts through success, self-reliance, or the desire to be above reproach. It wraps itself in good intentions, thrives under the guise of achievement, and deceives us into thinking we are in control. By the time it takes root, pride separates us from God, leading us down a path of spiritual decay. Proverbs 11 verse 2 warns, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." To the world, pride often looks like strength or confidence, qualities admired and celebrated. But in God's eyes, pride is dangerous because it blinds us to our need for Him. Pride creates a barrier between us and the wisdom God longs to give. It deceives us into thinking we have all the answers and can live independently of His guidance. In contrast, humility clears the way for true understanding. Proverbs 3 verse 34 reminds us, "He mocks proud mockers but shows favor to the humble and oppressed." To be humble is to recognize our limitations, to admit we don't have all the answers, and to acknowledge that our strength comes only from God. Humility keeps us teachable, aligning our hearts with God's wisdom. Humility is the key to aligning our lives with God's truth. It's not about devaluing ourselves, but about seeing ourselves clearly, acknowledging our dependence on God. Proverbs celebrates humility because it leads to wisdom, favor, and honor. Proverbs 29 verse 23 says, "Pride brings a person low, but the lowly in spirit gain honor." In the book of Sirach, humility is praised in a similar way. Sirach 3:18 advises, "The greater you are, the more you must humble yourself, so you will find favor in the sight of the Lord." This is a countercultural truth. The world teaches us to stand out, to assert our strengths, and to seek recognition. But Proverbs and Sirach point us to a different standard, one where true greatness is found in service, not status. Proverbs challenges us to place our worth not in worldly achievements but in God's love and grace. Those who are lowly in spirit are lifted up by God. This principle invites us to let go of the need for recognition and trust that God sees, knows, and honors those who approach Him with humble hearts. The ultimate fulfillment of Proverbs' teachings on humility is found in the life of Jesus Christ. Philippians 2 verses 6 to 8 describes Him, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to His own advantage. Rather, He made Himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus, though fully God, chose the path of humility. He didn't cling to His divine rights but gave His life for others, embodying the ultimate victory of humility over pride. His life demonstrates that true greatness lies in surrender, service, and sacrifice. Proverbs also warns us of how easily pride disguises itself. Proverbs 26 verse 12 cautions, "Do you see a person wise in their own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for them." Pride often masquerades as self-confidence, independence, or the belief that we know better. It can show up as resistance to correction, dismissal of others' advice, or a refusal to acknowledge our need for growth. This verse challenges us to examine our hearts. Are there areas where pride has crept in? Have we become reliant on our own understanding instead of seeking God's wisdom? Pride blinds us, while humility keeps us open to God's guidance and correction. Proverbs invites us to lay down our pride and walk humbly with God. Imagine living free from the need to prove yourself, willing to accept correction, and open to learning from others. Humility isn't about thinking less of ourselves. It's about thinking of ourselves less. It's about recognizing that every gift, talent, and opportunity comes from God and is meant to glorify Him. Humility also transforms our relationships. It enables us to listen, to serve, and to build others up instead of seeking our own advancement. It allows us to live with a quiet confidence, trusting in God's provision rather than our own strength. Are there areas in your life where pride has taken root? Are you leaning on your own understanding instead of seeking God's wisdom? Proverbs challenges us to release our self-sufficiency, admit our need for God, and walk humbly with Him. When we let go of pride, we experience the fullness of God's love, guidance, and protection. Imagine living this way, free from the need to prove yourself, secure in God's love, and open to His wisdom. Let's embrace humility, not as a burden, but as the foundation for true greatness. Let's align our hearts with God's truth and reflect His love to the world. And if this message resonates with you, take a moment to share it with someone who might need encouragement. Here on Daily Bible Stories, we're uncovering truths that not only deepen our faith but transform the way we live and love. One of the most profound themes in the book of Proverbs is the call to trust God completely and abandon self-reliance. In a world that celebrates independence and self-sufficiency, Proverbs turns this idea on its head, declaring that true peace, guidance, and security are found not in trusting ourselves, but in surrendering to God. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 captures this beautifully. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Imagine the weight of those words. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. This isn't about partial trust or a safety net we rely on only in times of crisis. It's an invitation to place every fear, every hope, and every decision in God's hands, to trust Him with every fiber of our being. King Solomon, with all his wisdom and unparalleled understanding, knew the limits of human knowledge. Despite his vast insights, he recognized that even the wisest among us cannot grasp the fullness of God's plan. That's why he urges us to lean not on our own understanding but to trust in the One whose wisdom surpasses all. Self-reliance is an enticing path. It offers a sense of control, a false security, and the illusion that we can shape our own destiny. But Proverbs warns us of the danger of this mindset. Proverbs 28 verse 26 declares, "Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe." This isn't an insult. It's a sobering reminder that our knowledge, no matter how vast, is finite. We can't see the full picture or predict the consequences of every choice. To trust solely in ourselves is to build our lives on a foundation that cannot withstand life's storms. Imagine standing at the edge of a dense forest, trying to navigate without a map. You might manage for a while, but eventually you'd reach a point where your own sense of direction isn't enough. Proverbs tells us that God is the map, the guide who knows every twist and turn. When we acknowledge Him and surrender our plans to His will, He directs our paths, not randomly, but with divine purpose and precision. Proverbs 16 verse 9 illustrates this beautifully. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. We can dream, plan, and set goals, but it is ultimately God who shapes our journey. His guidance surpasses our understanding, leading us even when we cannot see the way. Solomon reminds us that while we can make plans, God's wisdom weaves those plans into something greater than we could imagine. Trusting God isn't passive. It requires active surrender, a deliberate choice to lay down our pride and embrace His direction. Proverbs 19 verse 21 echoes this truth. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. This is more than letting go of control. It's an invitation to align our desires with God's purpose. While our dreams and ideas may seem right to us, God's wisdom sees beyond the present moment. He guides us not just toward what we want, but toward what will truly fulfill and transform us. The story of Job offers a powerful illustration of this surrender. In Job 12 verse 13 we read, "To God belong wisdom and power. Counsel and understanding are his." Job's journey of suffering and loss brought him to a profound realization. Trusting God doesn't mean understanding every detail of his plan. It means believing that God's wisdom and power are enough to carry us through any trial. Like Proverbs, Job reminds us that true trust is rooted in faith, not comprehension. When we surrender to God, Proverbs promises a peace that self-reliance could never offer. Proverbs 3 verse 24 assures us, "When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet." This isn't just about physical rest. It's about deep, inner peace. It's the freedom from anxiety that comes when we stop trying to control everything ourselves. Trusting God brings rest to our souls, soothing us even amid life's uncertainties. Are you truly trusting God with all your heart? Or are there areas where you're leaning on your own understanding? Proverbs invites us to examine our lives and bring every decision, every plan, under God's wisdom. It challenges us to abandon the illusion of control and embrace a life guided by faith rather than fear. Imagine the freedom that comes from trusting God completely. Think of how many of life's worries would fade if you truly believe that God is directing your steps, that his plans are better than yours, and that he knows what you need even more than you do. Proverbs promises, "He will make your path straight." This doesn't mean our lives will be free from challenges, but it assures us that every trial and triumph has a purpose. With God as our guide, even the twists and turns of life lead somewhere meaningful. Proverbs 3 verses 7 to 8 offers a final encouragement. "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones." Trusting God isn't just a spiritual act. It impacts every aspect of our lives. When we release the burdens of self-reliance, we experience renewal that strengthens us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It's a healing that flows from knowing we are held by a God who loves us deeply and works all things together for our good. What would it look like to trust God fully? To surrender every worry, every decision, and every plan into his capable hands? Proverbs invites us into this life. A life where peace replaces anxiety, faith triumphs over fear, and God's wisdom guides every step. If this resonates with you, take a moment to reflect on where you might need to let go of control and trust God more fully. And if you know someone who needs this encouragement, share this message with them. Here on Daily Bible Stories, we're uncovering truths that lead to freedom, faith, and the abundant life God promises to those who trust him. The book of Proverbs doesn't shy away from the complexities of human emotions, and among them, anger is addressed as both a powerful force and a potential stumbling block on the path to wisdom. Proverbs 16 verse 32 states, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city." Think about that for a moment. Solomon, a great king who led armies and built a magnificent kingdom, declared that mastering one's anger is greater than conquering a city. Why? Because overcoming the turmoil within is far more challenging, and, in God's eyes, far more honorable than conquering anything in the external world. Anger is a natural human response, often sparked by frustration, betrayal, or injustice. But Proverbs reminds us that left unchecked, anger can quickly spiral into impulsive actions, harsh words, and fractured relationships. Proverbs 29 verse 11 warns, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." This verse draws a clear line between wisdom and folly. A fool is ruled by their emotions, letting anger dictate their actions, while a wise person exercises restraint and brings calm. In today's world, venting anger is often seen as a show of strength or dominance, but Proverbs calls it foolishness, a sign of being controlled by emotion rather than guided by wisdom. Consider Solomon's perspective as a leader who dealt with constant challenges, conflicts, and betrayals. For a king, Letting anger take control could have devastating consequences, impulsive decisions that could harm not just individuals but entire nations. While our anger might not impact a kingdom, it has the power to deeply affect our families, friendships, and spiritual health. Proverbs urges us to handle anger carefully, recognizing it for what it is, a powerful emotion that requires self-control and wisdom. But self-control doesn't come naturally. It's a skill developed through intentionality, humility, and dependence on God. Proverbs 19 verse 11 says, "A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." This verse challenges us to look beyond the immediate sting of anger and instead choose patience. Proverbs teaches that controlling our temper is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, a reflection of God's grace and wisdom. Every act of self-control honors God by mirroring His patience with us. Throughout the Bible, God displays incredible patience with humanity, offering mercy where judgment was deserved. Just as He is slow to anger and abounding in love, Psalm 103 verse 8, He calls us to reflect the same patience in our relationships. Proverbs 14 verse 29 offers further insight. "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." The issue isn't anger itself, it's how we handle it. There's a place for righteous anger, a deep indignation toward injustice, cruelty, or oppression that reflects God's heart. But even righteous anger requires self-control. Without it, we risk letting anger fester or lead us into sin. The Book of Sirach, another ancient wisdom text, echoes Proverbs' teachings on self-control and forgiveness. Sirach 28:2-3 challenges us. "Forgive your neighbor the wrong he has done, and then your sins will be pardoned when you pray." Does a man harbor anger against another, and yet seek healing from the Lord? Both Sirach and Proverbs emphasize that forgiveness and self-control aren't just good practices. They are essential for living a life of wisdom, peace, and spiritual alignment with God. Letting go of anger, especially when it hinders our relationship with God, is vital for a heart that seeks His guidance. In today's culture, where venting frustrations and getting even are often celebrated, the idea of exercising self-control over anger feels almost countercultural. But Proverbs teaches that real strength lies not in unleashing our anger but in holding it back. Proverbs 15 verse 18 reminds us, "A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel." This isn't just practical advice. It's a spiritual principle. Choosing patience over anger not only preserves peace but also reflects the very heart of God. Imagine the freedom that would come from mastering this principle. How many arguments could be avoided? How many relationships could be healed? Proverbs 25 verse 28 offers one of the most striking images of self-control. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. In ancient times, a city without walls was vulnerable, exposed to attack and unable to defend itself. Proverbs uses this imagery to show that a lack of self-control leaves us equally defenseless. When anger controls us, it leads to words and actions we later regret, leaving us spiritually vulnerable. Self-control acts as a protective wall, guarding our hearts and minds from destruction. But exercising self-control doesn't mean denying our emotions. It means directing them. It means channeling anger into constructive action rather than letting it consume us. Proverbs encourages us to be vigilant and intentional, protecting our spirits from the damage that unchecked anger can bring. Imagine how different life could look if we embraced Proverbs' wisdom on anger and self-control. Picture a world where patience and understanding outweigh retaliation, where grace is extended before judgment, and where people seek God's peace instead of venting every frustration. This is the life Proverbs calls us to, a life where we reflect God's character in every reaction, every conversation, and every relationship. In moments of anger, we have a choice: to escalate or to calm, to react or to respond. Every time we choose self-control, we bring a little more of God's peace into our own hearts and into the lives of those around us. How do you respond to anger? Do you allow it to take control, or do you seek God's help in responding with patience? Proverbs invites us to examine our hearts, to recognize where anger has taken root, and to bring it under God's guidance. Anger doesn't have to lead to destruction. It can lead us closer to God if we're willing to surrender it to Him. Let's take Proverbs' wisdom to heart. Let's build the walls of self-control, reflect God's grace in our lives, and choose patience over wrath. And as we do, we'll not only experience peace for ourselves, but we'll also become instruments of God's peace for the world around us. In the book of Proverbs, discipline isn't seen as punishment or restriction. It's portrayed as a pathway to growth, wisdom, and a life that honors God. Discipline is described as a treasure, one that shapes our character, sharpens our focus, and refines our hearts. Proverbs 12 verse 1 sets the tone. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. This blunt reminder emphasizes a profound truth. Wisdom and discipline go hand in hand. In God's eyes, discipline is not harsh or limiting. It's a gift, a means of aligning our lives with His purpose and walking in His ways. Solomon, with all his insight, understood that a life without discipline is a life that drifts. Proverbs 25 verse 28 paints a vivid picture. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. Imagine a city without walls, exposed to every danger, every threat. Proverbs uses this imagery to show that without discipline, we leave ourselves vulnerable, not just to external challenges but to the impulses, distractions, and desires that can pull us away from God's path. Discipline, like strong city walls, offers protection. It provides structure and security, enabling us to navigate life with wisdom and intention. Proverbs also teaches that discipline isn't just for correction. It's a lifestyle, a daily commitment to live purposefully. Consider Proverbs 6 verses 6 to 8, which draws wisdom from one of God's smallest creatures. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. This isn't just about hard work. It's about self-motivation, the ability to act with foresight and diligence without needing constant supervision. Like the ant, we are called to live disciplined lives, preparing, persevering, and moving forward even when no one is watching. At its core, Proverbs reveals that discipline is an act of humility, a willingness to be corrected, to learn from mistakes, and to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. Proverbs 3 verses 11 to 12 offers a powerful perspective. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent His rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those He loves, as a father the son He delights in. Here, discipline is shown not as punishment but as a sign of God's love. When God corrects us, He isn't trying to control us, He's guiding us. His discipline protects us from paths that lead to destruction and gently nudges us back toward life. It's a reminder that His correction, while sometimes uncomfortable, is always for our good. This concept of loving discipline feels foreign in a world that often values independence and freedom from accountability. But Proverbs challenges that view, showing us that discipline isn't about limitation, it's about freedom. Proverbs 13 verse 18 warns, whoever disregards discipline comes to poverty and shame, but whoever heeds correction is honored. Discipline, in God's kingdom, is the key to honor and resilience. It doesn't restrict us. It empowers us to live with intention, focus, and strength. The Book of Sirach, another ancient wisdom text, also emphasizes the value of discipline. Sirach 18:14, 15 teaches, God's mercy is shown to those who accept discipline and who are eager to obey His judgments. Accepting discipline is an act of humility, an acknowledgement that God knows what's best for us, even when it's challenging or uncomfortable. Both Proverbs and Sirach remind us that God's correction is a gift. It's an expression of His mercy, shaping us into people who reflect His wisdom and character. Proverbs reminds us that discipline isn't just about what we avoid, it's about what we pursue. Proverbs 10 verse 17 says, whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. A disciplined life sets an example. It's a light that inspires others to seek wisdom, value correction, and pursue integrity. Think about the ripple effect of discipline in your family, workplace, or community. Discipline isn't just personal, it's communal. By embracing it, we encourage those around us to live with intention and purpose. In today's culture, discipline is often associated with self-denial or hardship. But Proverbs offers a different perspective. Discipline isn't a burden, it's a path to joy. Proverbs 15 verses 32 to 33 declares, "Those who disregard discipline despise themselves, but the one who heeds correction gains understanding." Wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. Discipline leads us to wisdom, humility, and ultimately, honor. It aligns our lives with God's design, allowing us to experience true fulfillment and lasting peace. Imagine a life where every decision is guided by God's wisdom, where every choice reflects His truth. Proverbs teaches that discipline helps us achieve this, not by controlling every detail, but by equipping us with the tools to choose wisely. Through discipline, we develop patience, self-control, and resilience, qualities that are invaluable in our walk with God. Discipline transforms us from the inside out. It strengthens our character, refines our hearts, and aligns our steps with God's purposes. It's not about perfection. It's about progress, about growing closer to God with each choice we make. How do you view discipline? Is it something you avoid or see as a burden? Or can you begin to see it as a gift? A pathway to growth, wisdom, and a deeper relationship with God. Proverbs challenges us to reframe our understanding of discipline, to see it not as restriction but as a means of experiencing the fullness of God's plan for our lives. Let's embrace discipline as a treasure, a tool that helps us build lives of purpose, focus, and integrity. Let's allow God's wisdom to shape our decisions, guide our paths, and bring us closer to Him. And as we do, we'll not only grow spiritually but inspire others to walk the same path of wisdom and grace. The book of Proverbs speaks powerfully about the family as the foundation of a flourishing life, a sacred space where love, wisdom, and character are nurtured and passed down through generations. Proverbs is filled with wisdom not only for parents but also for children, urging both to honor each other and to embrace God's truth as the guiding principle within their homes. In Proverbs, parenting is portrayed as one of life's highest callings, a divine responsibility to guide and shape young lives according to God's wisdom. One of the most well-known verses, Proverbs 22 verse 6, declares, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." This is more than a proverb. It's a promise. The foundation parents build in their children's lives influences their paths, shaping the decisions they make long after they leave home. To train up a child is more than teaching right from wrong. It's about guiding children to know God personally, to love His Word, and to live in alignment with His wisdom. It's modeling a life of faith, integrity, and dependence on God. Imagine Solomon, the author of many Proverbs, imparting this wisdom to his own children, sharing lessons born of both success and failure. He understood that wisdom isn't just taught, it's caught. Children learn as much from a parent's actions as from their words. Proverbs reminds us that parenting is about living as an example. Children observe how we handle conflict, treat others, and prioritize our relationship with God. Our lives speak volumes, and the lessons we live often resonate louder than the lessons we teach. Discipline plays a vital role in Proverbs' vision for parenting. Proverbs 13 verse 24 tells us, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them." Here, the rod symbolizes guidance and correction, not punishment for its own sake. Discipline is a loving tool used to steer children away from harmful behaviors and toward wisdom. It's not about control but about teaching children the difference between wisdom and folly, right and wrong. Discipline, in this context, is a profound act of love, designed to protect and prepare children for life. Yet Proverbs emphasizes balance. Discipline must always be paired with patience and love. Proverbs 15 verse 1 reminds us, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Parenting requires firmness tempered with gentleness, correction given with compassion, and teaching done with patience. Harshness and criticism can wound a child's spirit, but loving discipline nurtures and builds them up. Parents are called to create an environment where children feel secure in both love and guidance. The book of Sirach echoes Proverbs' perspective on discipline and love. Sirach 30:1-2 says, "Whoever loves their son will discipline him often, so that he may rejoice in him in the end." Both Proverbs and Sirach emphasize that true discipline is rooted in love, not control. It's an investment in a child's future joy and fulfillment. Parenting is a balance of correction and encouragement, instruction and affirmation, always aimed at a child's ultimate good. Children, in turn, are called to honor their parents. Proverbs 1 verses 8-9 advises, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck." This imagery portrays parental guidance as a crown, a source of honor and blessing. When children embrace the wisdom of their parents, they carry a legacy of strength and character that serves them throughout their lives. Proverbs also places great responsibility on parents to be worthy of this honor. Proverbs 14 verse 26 teaches, "Whoever fears the Lord has a secure fortress, and for their children it will be a refuge." A parent's faith becomes a spiritual covering for their children, a place of safety and security where they can grow up anchored in God's love. Parents are called to create homes where God's presence is tangible, His truth is foundational, and His wisdom shapes every decision. In today's fast-paced world, where children are bombarded with conflicting messages, Proverbs' wisdom on family and parenting is more relevant than ever. The world often prioritizes achievements, activities, and material success over spiritual values. Proverbs urges parents to reclaim their homes as places of faith and wisdom, teaching God's ways as the highest priority. Let's pause and reflect. Are we creating homes where God's wisdom is cherished and lived out? Are we modeling patience, integrity, and love in a way that honors Him? Proverbs invites us to see our families as the first place where faith is nurtured, a sacred space where God's truth is both taught and embodied. Proverbs 20 verse 7 paints a beautiful picture of the impact of a righteous life. The righteous lead blameless lives. Blessed are their children after them. This verse speaks to the lasting influence of a life lived in alignment with God. When parents choose to walk in righteousness, they create a legacy of integrity, love, and faithfulness, a spiritual inheritance that blesses future generations. It's a legacy that goes beyond material wealth, shaping the hearts and minds of children for years to come. Imagine what it would look like if every family embraced the wisdom of Proverbs. Homes would become sanctuaries of God's love, where discipline is balanced with compassion, and children feel valued, protected, and guided. These homes wouldn't just benefit individual families, they would transform communities, influence generations, and ultimately impact the world. Proverbs calls us to see the family as a divine institution, a place where God's truth is lived out daily. It's an invitation to build our homes on the solid foundation of His Word, creating environments that honor Him and equip our children to do the same. The book of Proverbs addresses one of life's most challenging areas with unflinching clarity: sexual purity and the lure of temptation. Solomon speaks directly to these issues, urging readers to be vigilant, to exercise self-control, and to remember that our bodies and hearts are sacred, meant to honor God. Proverbs 5 verses 3-5 paints a vivid picture. "For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave." Imagine Solomon, a king surrounded by power, wealth, and constant temptation, penning these words. He would have known firsthand the dangers of allowing desire to cloud judgment. He likens temptation to a path that appears sweet and inviting but ultimately leads to bitterness, destruction, and death. The allure of forbidden attraction is fleeting, but its consequences can linger for a lifetime. Fractured relationships, damaged reputations, and spiritual isolation. Proverbs urges us to look beyond the surface allure of temptation and see it for what it truly is: a trap that ensnares not only us but those we love. Proverbs 6 verses 27 to 29 employs striking imagery. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet being scorched? So is he who sleeps with another man's wife. No one who touches her will go unpunished. This imagery leaves no room for ambiguity. Just as fire inevitably burns, succumbing to temptation leaves scars on the heart and soul. The consequences, both visible and hidden, are unavoidable. Solomon's wisdom invites us to consider not just the momentary pleasure but the lasting damage that indulgence can cause. But Proverbs doesn't stop at warning against temptation. It provides practical wisdom for resisting it. Proverbs 4 verse 23 advises, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." This powerful truth reveals that the battle for purity begins in the heart. The mind and soul are the gateways to our actions, and Proverbs teaches that by guarding what we allow into our hearts, our thoughts, desires, and intentions, we can avoid falling into the snares of temptation. Proverbs 7 recounts the story of a young man led astray by the seductive promises of temptation. Verses 22 to 23 describe the devastating outcome. All at once he followed her, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. This sobering account is not just about physical relationships. It's a broader warning about the power of unchecked desires and the importance of setting boundaries. Solomon urges us to exercise wisdom and discernment, recognizing that the path of temptation is one of destruction. The book of Sirach echoes Proverbs' warnings. Sirach 9:3-4 advises, "Do not gaze at a virgin, lest you be ensnared by her beauty. Do not give your soul to prostitutes, lest you destroy your inheritance." Both texts emphasize the importance of setting boundaries, not out of restriction, but out of protection. Boundaries preserve our integrity and honor God. They safeguard us from the compromises that can lead us down paths of regret and loss. In today's culture, Proverbs' teachings on sexual purity and temptation are more relevant than ever. We live in an age where boundaries are often disregarded, where purity is dismissed as outdated, and where temptation is everywhere, from social media to entertainment. Yet Proverbs calls us to a higher standard, urging us to value purity and seek God's wisdom in a world that glorifies the opposite. Why does Proverbs place such emphasis on purity? Because purity isn't just about refraining from certain actions. It's about honoring God with every part of our being. Proverbs 16 verse 2 reminds us, "All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord." God sees not only our actions but also our intentions, hidden thoughts, and deepest desires. Purity is about aligning every aspect of ourselves with God's holiness, honoring Him in thought, word, and deed. Imagine the freedom of living a life of purity and integrity, a life unburdened by guilt, unclouded by secrets, and fully dedicated to God. Proverbs 10 verse 9 promises, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." A life lived in purity and integrity brings peace and security. It's a life free from the fear of exposure, resting instead in the assurance of God's approval. Proverbs also offers a beautiful vision of love and commitment within the boundaries God has set. Proverbs 5 verses 18-19 encourages, "May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. May you ever be intoxicated with her love." Here, love and intimacy are celebrated as gifts from God, meant to flourish within the covenant of marriage. Rather than viewing purity as a restriction, Proverbs presents it as the pathway to deeper joy, trust, and connection. So how are you guarding your heart against temptation? Are you seeking God's wisdom in your relationships and decisions? Or are there areas where compromise has crept in? Proverbs invites us to examine our hearts, to set boundaries that protect our integrity, and to seek purity as a way of drawing closer to God. Imagine a life where every thought and action is aligned with God's holiness. A life where purity isn't a burden, but a freedom. Proverbs calls us to that life, offering wisdom that leads not only to peace and security, but also to deeper joy and fulfillment in our relationships and our walk with God. The book of Proverbs paints a striking and unforgettable picture of sin, warning us that it is far more than a simple mistake or a bad decision. Sin is a path, one that leads to darkness, suffering, and ultimately destruction. Proverbs reveals that when we choose to walk in sin, we aren't just making life difficult for ourselves. We're stepping into a dangerous spiritual reality that distances us from God's protection, peace, and guidance. Proverbs 5 verses 22 to 23 captures this truth powerfully. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline they will die, led astray by their own great folly. Here, sin is likened to a snare, a trap that entangles and holds its victims tightly, leading them toward ruin. It's a sobering reminder that sin doesn't simply happen to us. It's often the result of small, deliberate choices that pull us further from God and into bondage. In today's culture, sin is frequently trivialized, dismissed as a minor misstep or something easily brushed aside. But Proverbs refuses to downplay its gravity. Proverbs 10 verse 16 makes this clear. The wages of the righteous bring them life, but the income of the wicked brings them punishment. This verse echoes a spiritual reality found throughout Scripture. Every action has consequences. For those who walk in righteousness, the reward is life, peace, fulfillment, and alignment with God. But for those who choose sin, the result is emptiness, suffering, and ultimately judgment. One of Proverbs' most vivid warnings is found in Proverbs 1 verses 29 to 31. Since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. Sin bears fruit, a bitter harvest that we will inevitably reap. When we reject God's wisdom and choose our own way, we plant seeds of regret, pain, and loss. This imagery serves as a wake-up call. Sin isn't just a momentary decision. It has lasting, far-reaching consequences. Proverbs doesn't stop at generalities. It dives into specific actions and their outcomes. Proverbs 6 verses 27 to 28 offers a pointed warning about lust and sexual sin. Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned? Can a man walk on hot coals without his feet being scorched? The answer is clear. No one can escape the consequences of sin. Just as fire inevitably burns and coals scorch, sin leaves its mark. This isn't meant to shame us, but to open our eyes to the reality that God's commandments are given to protect us, not to restrict us. Similarly, the book of Sirach echoes Proverbs' warnings with stark imagery. Sirach 21:2 advises, "Flee from sin as from a snake. If you approach it, it will bite you. Its teeth are lion's teeth, destroying human lives." Both Proverbs and Sirach remind us that sin is not something to be flirted with or taken lightly. It is a destructive force that, when unchecked, devours and destroys. Yet despite the seriousness of sin, Proverbs also offers a message of hope. Redemption is always within reach for those who turn to God. Proverbs 28 verse 13 delivers a promise of mercy. "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy." While sin entraps us, confession and repentance free us. God's mercy is abundant and His forgiveness complete for those who honestly acknowledge their wrongs and seek His grace. Proverbs urges us to lay down the weight of hidden sins, to bring them into the light, and to find the peace and relief that only God's forgiveness can offer. Imagine the freedom that comes from confessing sin, from no longer carrying the burden of guilt and shame. Proverbs 14 verse 12 provides a critical reminder. "There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death." This isn't just a warning about moral failure. It's an invitation to examine the paths we're walking. Are we following our own understanding, or are we seeking God's wisdom to guide us? Without God's guidance, even a seemingly right path can lead to spiritual death. Proverbs doesn't leave us in despair. Provides a solution, living in reverence and awe of God. Proverbs 16 verse 6 proclaims, "Through love and faithfulness sin is atoned for. Through the fear of the Lord evil is avoided." When we live in awe of God, honoring Him and embracing His love and faithfulness, we are empowered to resist sin and walk in righteousness. A life lived in alignment with God is not only free from the weight of sin but also filled with His peace and purpose. Are there areas in your life where you've been ignoring the consequences of sin? Are there paths you're walking that may feel right but deep down you know they're leading you away from God? Proverbs invites us to face these questions honestly, to acknowledge where we've strayed, and to return to God's mercy. Proverbs 11 verse 19 assures us, "Truly the righteous attain life, but whoever pursues evil finds death." This isn't just about physical life or death. It's about the state of our souls, our hearts, and our relationship with God. Sin has consequences, but God's grace is greater than any mistake we've made. Imagine the freedom of walking in alignment with God's wisdom, choosing the path that leads to life rather than destruction. It's a life of integrity, peace, and security. A life that reflects the love and faithfulness of our Creator. Proverbs reminds us that while sin may promise sweetness in the moment, its consequences are bitter and lasting. But it also assures us that God's mercy is always available to those who turn to Him. Redemption is within reach, and His wisdom is a light that leads us back to life. In the book of Proverbs, the consequences of sin are presented as serious and unavoidable, yet they are never outside the control of a sovereign God. Proverbs teaches that while sin leads to destruction, God's sovereignty ensures that no sin, no mistake, and no rebellion is beyond His reach. He orchestrates justice and mercy to fulfill His ultimate purpose, turning even our failures into opportunities for redemption. Proverbs 16 verse 4 declares, "The Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster." This profound truth may feel weighty, even unsettling, but it reveals the depth of God's control and His unwavering commitment to justice. God's sovereignty means that sin never goes unchecked. The consequences of our actions unfold within His design, guiding us back to Him or demonstrating the seriousness of living outside His will. Even in the chaos and brokenness caused by sin, God's justice prevails, and His purposes remain unshaken. Proverbs 3 verses 33 to 34 illustrates the interplay of God's justice and mercy. "The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but He blesses the home of the righteous. He mocks proud mockers but shows favor to the humble and oppressed." Here we see a picture of God's sovereignty in action. Sin brings a curse upon those who reject His ways, while humility invites His grace and favor. God's control ensures that the consequences of sin are not arbitrary. They serve a purpose. They draw us toward repentance and reveal the stark contrast between a life aligned with God and one lived in rebellion against Him. One of Proverbs' most striking insights into God's sovereignty is its focus on the heart. Proverbs 21 verse 1 proclaims, "In the Lord's hand, the king's heart is a stream of water that He channels toward all who please Him." Even the hearts of kings, rulers, and leaders are under God's control. This means that the consequences of sin, whether in our personal lives or on a societal level, are allowed or redirected by God to fulfill His purposes. No sin, no failure, and no human authority is beyond His influence. God works in and through every situation, even those resulting from sin, to bring about His glory. Imagine the comfort and reverence that comes from knowing this. Nothing, not even the consequences of our worst choices, can derail God's plan. Proverbs 19 verse 21 affirms this. "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." This doesn't diminish the seriousness of sin or our responsibility for its consequences, but it reveals God's unshakable sovereignty. Even in the midst of setbacks, heartbreak, or regret caused by sinful choices, God is at work, weaving everything into His divine tapestry. The book of Job, another profound wisdom text, reflects the same theme of God's sovereignty over all things. Despite immense suffering, Job acknowledges the sovereignty of God. "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted." Job 42 verse 2. Similarly, Proverbs teaches that the consequences of sin and the trials we face are never outside of God's control. He uses even the pain of our failures to guide, correct, and restore us. Proverbs balances its warnings about sin with assurances of God's mercy. Proverbs 28 verse 13 offers hope. Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. God, in His sovereignty, doesn't leave us to suffer alone. While sin carries consequences, His mercy is always available to those who turn to Him with repentant hearts. Confession and repentance open the door to forgiveness, healing, and restoration. God's discipline, even when painful, is motivated by love. Proverbs 3 verses 11 to 12 reminds us, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent His rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those He loves, as a father the son He delights in." God's discipline is not punishment for punishment's sake. It's correction driven by love. He uses it to refine us, to teach us, and to deepen our relationship with Him. Even the consequences of sin are tools in His hands, shaping us into people who reflect His character. This is the paradox of Proverbs teaching on sin and God's sovereignty. While sin brings destruction, God uses even the consequences of sin to bring about good. He is the God who transforms ashes into beauty, who brings life from death. Proverbs 16 verse 9 captures this beautifully. In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Even when we stray, God establishes a way back. He is the God of second chances, redemption, and restoration. Have you experienced the painful consequences of sin? Moments where choices led to regret, loss, or heartbreak. Are there areas in your life where sin has caused pain, and you wonder if anything good can come from it? Proverbs encourages us to bring these experiences to God, trusting that His sovereignty is greater than our failures. He can use every mistake and every consequence to teach us, to bring us closer to Him, and to reveal His grace in ways we never imagined. Proverbs 11 verse 19 offers this promise. "Truly the righteous attain life, but whoever pursues evil finds death." This is more than a warning. It's an invitation to trust in God's redemptive power. While sin carries consequences, God's sovereignty ensures that those consequences are never wasted. He uses them to guide us back to Him, to refine us, and to display His mercy and grace. Imagine the freedom that comes from trusting in a God who is both sovereign and merciful, a God who weaves even our failures into His greater purpose. Proverbs calls us to embrace this truth, that while sin's consequences are real, they are never outside of God's control. His justice remains unshaken, and His mercy is always within reach. Let's bring our mistakes and regrets to Him, knowing that He can turn them into testimonies of His grace. Let's walk in the confidence that no matter how far we stray, God's sovereignty is greater, His mercy is deeper, and His purposes will always prevail. As we close, take a moment to reflect on the journey that Proverbs invites us to take. Are you ready to embrace wisdom not just as an idea but as a way of life? To walk with integrity, humility, and a deep reverence for God? This wisdom isn't about surface change. It transforms us from the inside out, shaping us into people who honor God in every word, every thought, and every action. If this journey through Proverbs has stirred something within you, consider sharing these truths with others. Here on Daily Bible Stories, our mission is to uncover the hidden treasures of Scripture and reveal the depth of God's love and purpose for each one of us. If this exploration has blessed you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message with someone who is searching for God's truth. Proverbs reminds us that wisdom isn't just for ourselves. It's a light meant to guide others, a gift to be shared. It has the power to draw hearts closer to God's love and redemption. As we've seen, true wisdom begins with a heart that reveres the Lord, and it leads us into a life filled with joy, peace, and unwavering trust in Him. May the wisdom of Proverbs guide your steps, guard your heart, and lead you into the fullness of life God has prepared for you. Stay rooted in His truth, and let His wisdom light your path every day. Stay blessed, and thank you for joining us on this journey.